Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Baz Porter. He has shown people how to journey through personal hardship and propel themselves to the forefront of high performance, which is exactly what he's done for himself. He is the innovator and architect of something called the RAMS system. And in part 1 of the show, we really talked about who Baz is and has become. You know, the really interesting thing here for all of us is that none of us arrive fully formed. We're being formed by our environments. You know this from listening to me talk about the emotional source code. And when we got into some of Baz's emotional source code, there was something that stood out that I think is really important for you to understand. And that was this idea of morphing. You've heard me talk about before that when we don't, quote, fit in, we morph into something else in order to fit in. And in the process of morphing, we might put aside some of the better parts of ourselves. Those parts are not gone, they're just hidden in the shadows. And sometimes it will take a dramatic or several dramatic events to bring them forward. In part 1 of the show, Baz talked about some of the events that had happened in his life and the road he'd gone down, including going from being this bullied child to being in the military, to being a DJ, to becoming homeless and alcoholic and drug addicted, all those things to this journey to where today he is helping leaders understand their business acumen and guide them towards astronomical growth, scaling their ventures up to $100 million. So there's a lot in part 1. If you didn't catch part 1, I highly recommend that you go back and do that. As I just mentioned, he created this system. He's the architect of this system called the RAMS system. And I want to talk a little bit more about that here, Baz, because there were some things in part 1 that might have seemed a bit woo for people who are not that way inclined. Talk to us about the RAMS system, because from what you tell me, it's about the evolution of high-performance coaching. So tell us what you can so that we can grasp that and maybe possibly put some of that into action.
So the RAMS is all about aiming for the stars and keeping it that way. So the result. And it's specifically designed to focus on the outlandish vision that leaders have and the attitude and mind state, not mindset. Mindset, I believe, is limited. So I go in for a mind state and the attitude of how we present ourselves. Then it goes into mastery and then the systems. But each one of these components have a plethora of a blueprint, if you like, to get to what it is that you exactly want. When I say to somebody, give me a result that you want in 3 months.
Outrageous or just generally?
Anything you want.
I want to be in the top 5 podcasts in the world, aside with Diary of a CEO, Joe Rogan, etc.
Okay. Then we go into why. Why do you want that?
Impact and influence.
Is that the real reason you want that?
Absolutely.
What components do you have that correlate to what other 4 podcasts, because you'll be the 5th one in there, so there's now 4. Who are you knocking off, and what components do you have that correlate exactly within them?
I don't know that I'm interested in knocking anybody off anything. I think that each one of them serves an audience in a particularly beautiful and unique way. What am I bringing that's unique? Well, as my agent told me recently, much to my surprise, it's me. I didn't realize that, but it's me. I was like, yeah, we're going to get such great guests. He's like, do you watch late night TV? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, who do you watch? Do you watch Jimmy Kimmel or do you watch one of the others? I'm like, I watch Colbert. He goes, why? The same guests do the rounds. I'm like, oh yeah, never thought of that. Okay, now I get it. I think that part of what I bring that's unique is me, but what I bring that's unique in the context of what I do is that I'm much more interested in the human being that became the human doing. And what a lot of the focus on today is on what a human is doing. I'm really interested in the human being who evolved into the doing. So I think that that's the unique piece.
So if you could put that into a concept of building that towards a future for somebody else, which you're doing anyway, how would you present that to the world to be relatable?
Not sure I understand the question. Please help me out.
The concept of what you're doing
Yes.
is so unique.
Yes.
How would you package that so it's more relatable for somebody who is receiving it who doesn't know who you are?
As it says in the opening of the podcast, come for the stories, stay for the learning. And as the final line says, stay curious, my friends, stay curious. That's the essence of it, I would say. We as human beings are story beings. Even before we were verbal, we were painting stories on cave walls. The stories are what brings us in and what gives us the memory to give us access to the knowledge that we can implement and use in our lives. So you come for the story, you stay for the learning, and the only way to integrate that learning is by staying curious.
So I go back to my original question. What is the exact result that you truly want in 3 months? It's not just to be on top 5 of the podcast.
It's the impact and influence of having people become deeply curious and understand the value of not only their own story, but the stories of others, to listen below the surface, to listen to what's going on that's not spoken.
So that would be the result, not actually being on the top 5, wouldn't it? Would you agree?
Sure, it's just being in the top 5 is the marker, that's all. It's nothing more. It's like money in a bank account is a marker. It's got nothing more.
It's the measurable component to what the impact is. Would you agree?
Yes.
So you've got 2 components that are aligned to each other. That's the result that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Next phase of it, if this was a normal Joe, my next question would be, what's your mind state? Not the mindset. Mindset is a limitation. We can go so far with the mindset. A mind state is an emotional component that you bring forward in your business, in your life, and that's who you are every single moment or every day.
Deeply curious. That's it.
Why? I'm being curious now.
The reason I'm deeply curious is because I believe, it's not the truth, it's what I believe. I believe that the highest power in the universe is that of love, and I know that I'm in my own way as soon as I've moved into judgment, and I also know that judgment is my natural state of being because I'm a human being and I have to judge in order to survive. All this don't be judgmental stuff is bullshit. You can't avoid being judgmental. Cross the street, you have to be judgmental about how to do it. That's not a bad thing. But not letting the judgment run my life is a vastly different thing. And so from that point of view, being curious gives me access to love. Love for the moment, love for the individual, and even love for the bullshit they might be trying to feed me.
So the component of being curious, the said result, would they align for you?
The result of the impact?
The result of the impact and having the measured component, which is the top 5 bit, are they in alignment for you?
As far as I'm concerned, they are.
Yeah. And that's all that matters. There's no judgment. For me, this is your vision. So let me go into mastery. How would you level that up in actualization? How would you start living what you're creating?
Well, I guess I somewhat, maybe my own illusion, I am living it. How can I live it more? I probably could study those shows that I respect and appreciate, not just the ones in the top 5, but others, a little more, because it's always good to learn from somebody who's mastered something. I probably could dive into that a little bit more and do more analysis around that, with caution to not try and take on their style over my own. But I believe I do what it takes to master it.
So within 3 components, you've now got a defined vision, haven't you not?
Mm-hmm.
You've got something to measure it by, and going back into yourself again, picturing yourself in 3 months' time, how does that actually feel, being that top 5 measured result and having the impact in the world through something you love doing? How does it feel?
Spectacular. Feels nothing short of spectacular because it's fulfilling my purpose. And by the way, it's not the only one of my big, hairy, audacious goals. It's just one that's in the context of the podcast.
So how would you celebrate it?
Well, first and foremost, I would celebrate it with my beloved, because she's actually my business partner and she is also the editor and producer of the show. So I would definitely celebrate it with her and her hard work. Then the next after that, I would celebrate it with my kids and then my closest friends. And I would be letting them know that I had hit that target. And I would celebrate it after my closest friends with my agent, who would probably already know. He'd probably be the one telling me. And then the way I would celebrate it is I would sit down in silence by myself, get connected to the deepest soulful part of myself, and sit in a deep state of gratitude for at least 5 minutes and breathe deeply into that. So that's how I'd celebrate it.
But when you actually were speaking about that, what was the emotion that came over you?
Joy.
Because your whole demeanor.
Yeah, joy and gratitude.
So would you agree in that moment you could see yourself living that potential reality?
Absolutely. The mind knows no difference between that which is imagined with all of the senses and that which is experienced with all of the senses. So yes.
So it comes to the final part of systems, the actualization of what you've just done. And the systems part of RAMs is where the technical stuff where you bring it all in and actually build up the blueprint to get to what you've just felt emotionally, mentally, and also physically, because when you start things emotionally, you've actually just built a neurological pathway to get where you're going. You've created that reality. That's quantum physics. That's what the RAM system does, essentially. And that was in less than 5 minutes.
And so somebody watching this podcast or listening to the podcast could slow it down, could go back, go over it and over it again themselves. But the bottom line is nobody's objective in their subjective reality. And what that means is you're going to need someone to hold you accountable. Now, you may think, you may believe, you may even be one of the 1 in, let's say, 10 million who doesn't need that. Maybe you're a Steve Jobs or a Elon Musk or a Gary Vaynerchuk or someone like that. But the chances are that's not who you are. You're going to need someone to walk you through that. That system you just walked us through there, Baz, is that how your coaching runs, or is there an online platform of that? How does that work?
So the framework is just a framework. Everything that I do is bespoke. It's done case-by-case basis, because not one of us has the same goals, have the same upbringing, we have different belief systems, all of that. So I can't do that verbatim. It's not one size fits all. It's designed specifically for the person. So when the blueprint comes out and we sit down after a month of going in depth with all this, because that's how long the first part of it takes to really define what it is you want. I've had coaches, I've had mentors. I ring up people when I need help, as you well know, Dov. And I ask questions that I can't see the answers to because I'm too close. I'm not seeing it from a different perspective. And the ability to say, I need support, I need guidance at any level of business, whether you're a Fortune 100 CEO like Elon Musk, and I will assure you, he has coaches, he has people he can ask things to because he needs different perspectives. Whether the public admits it or not, we all need support. And it's being brave enough to say, I don't know everything, but I want this so badly I'm prepared to step into that uncomfortability, as you would say, Dov, to be curious, to have a conversation. Because that conversation could just be changing not just your life, but billions of others. And that's no under-exaggeration.
And certainly the lives of everybody who is even in your sphere. So if you're married, it's going to be your partner, it's going to be your kids, it's going to be potentially your grandchildren. I think that oftentimes we're so big and so successful that we don't recognize we're actually playing small compared to where we can be.
And that's very true. I think that the moment we step back and go, I'm playing small, what's the real potential here? And then give yourself permission to step into that. So often we don't give ourselves permission. We're all afraid of something. My biggest fear was being seen. I'm forever working through that. I'm forever working through not being authentic, because for so long in my life, I was morphing into I thought people wanted me to be. My first time on stage, I was petrified. It wasn't planned. I was just invited up. My hands were sweating. I was shaking. I don't remember the speech, not one bit of it. But when I came back and I stepped down, there was a standing ovation of 400 people. I was like, oh, cool, that worked. But what the fuck happened? I had no clue. But it's because I was in that authentic self. And then over a period of 2 or 3 years, I got into my ego. I wanted to be the next Tony Robbins. And it was just crazy. I was just platinum this, diamond there. And it just wasn't who I was. I lost myself because I was trying to please people what I thought that's why they wanted me to be.
So again, you morph.
Yeah, but the moment that I fell and I looked at my wife Nicola and she was like, what did you do that for, you idiot?
The wisdom of a life, partner.
It's great. But the moment she said to me, let's reevaluate, what do you really want to be? And that was one of the most profound questions that someone's ever asked me. And not a coach. This came from my wife. She's the reason I'm here. She saved my life. And the reason she saved my life was because it was most unexpected.
Tell us more.
I left the UK January the 6th, 2019. Prolific date for other reasons, a couple of years on. I'd given up on myself and humanity. I was so far beyond damaged, I thought at the time, no one wanted me. And I packed a bag, left the UK, $360 in my back pocket, traveled 33 states, ended up in Los Angeles, 6th flower, 7th flower. And I had a client who took me for dinner. She brought a +1 with her. That +1 is now Nicola. She's my wife. She wasn't my wife back then, but we spent 3 days together, and then she dropped me off at the airport, and I went to Australia. In the July of 2019, she flew me back. In the end of September, we got married in Orcas Island. It was that quick. I didn't have any documentation on me. It wasn't done for a visa or green card or shit like that. It just divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. She got me and she gave me hope again because I'd lost hope in myself. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was drinking and doing all that jazz. But all of it, when I met her, she made sense of everything. She gave me hope within myself. She gave me a spark of there's a possibility that I can serve, create something better of myself than I already been without morphing into somebody. And the journey from then till now has taken me on ups and downs and all over the place to extract what's really me, the components that I lost as a child, the valuable components, the authenticity, and stop being what everybody else wants me to be, but living life how I actually am and who I am, without dressing it up in some big bravado to help someone else's cause, or being a big man on stages, or being a big coach. I don't care about any of them. I care about the impact towards others and also who I am, and make sure I'm showing up as that person every single day, because morphing doesn't suit me anymore.
And that being said, morphing was a survival mechanism that you had to do as a child. Therefore, that neural pathway is very well worn and therefore is the default position. And as the default position, how do you deal with that today when you are confronted with something that is uncomfortable, where it would be the knee-jerk? There's no thought in it. There's a knee-jerk to morph, and you might even do it. But how do you recognize that you're in that, and how do you pull yourself back from that? Because I think that most people who are morphing don't know they're doing it. That's number one. You have a little bit more of an advantage. You've done more work on yourself. You have that. So when you find yourself in that space and you're on that knee-jerk to morph, how do you recognize it and how do you pull it back?
Firstly, I've learned to pause and think about my answer. Secondly, one of the most valuable lessons anybody can learn, and I've had a very hard lesson learning this, is if you own it, you take away the power. And the moment you own something and remove the emotional component, bad, good, right, wrong, that was just the event and I accept it, but this is what I learned from it. The moment you step back and think about, why am I answering this way? Is this actually self-serving or is it serving others? And conversations with you, Nicola, many other people who are renowned leaders in the industry have helped me learn that or push me towards that direction. And I've had my journey to go, actually, yeah, I fucked up and that was shit and I won't do it again. But moving through it and going, yeah, this is what I have to learn. And I take responsibility for X, Y, Z. That was a previous version of myself. Let me reintroduce myself.
So if you were to meet someone who knew you during that time where your ego was getting the best of you and you were morphed into whatever the heck it was you were morphing into, and they said, you're probably full of it, you've not really changed, because people don't really like to see change. Everybody claims they like it, but they don't really. If you were to meet that person who said that to you, how would you respond?
Quite simply, give me a chance to prove that I actually have. Not by my words, by my actions. Let them talk, not me.
And if you think about that little boy who was bullied at home, who was bullied at school, who learned how to repress himself, if I was to fly him into your house today, what would he say to you? Not what would you say to him? What would he think about you living this life as you are in every possible level? What would he think of you? What would he say to you?
As a little boy, he would probably say, thank you. Thank you for finally being the person that you should be and learning from the lessons without the lessons burying you, because that's quite simply the case it would have been.
Do you think he would recognize you? I'm not talking about the way you look, but who you are.
I think he would recognize part of me, but some other parts and aspects, no.
What wouldn't he recognize?
The person I once was. Everybody's learning. In that learning, we change fundamentally. But the older part of me is the more experienced part. But my heart, the part that can never be changed, the essence of who we are, he would recognize. But the previous morphs have, like snake skins, drifted off. And I'd like to think he would be proud of where I've come from.
Very cool. Very cool. Where were you born?
I was born just outside of London.
And now you live where?
Colorado.
Colorado. It's a bit of a journey, huh? We love stories of transformation. Do you fade away with the trauma And I think that every time these traumatic events happen for us, as you said, there's a sense of a shedding of the skin of who we were. There's a transformation, but most of us go looking for the old skin, and we're trying to sort of glue it back on and try to bring ourselves back together, as opposed to recognizing that this metamorphosis is an important part of our evolution. It's a way of us becoming or getting closer to the truth of who we are. That's an important message in what you're talking about in this whole idea of transformative trauma, is that taking that personal pain and turning it into professional power. As we sort of close up the show here, but before we do that, if there's a single message about that concept of transformational trauma that you'd like to leave the audience with, what would it be?
Don't let what happens to you define you. I learned very recently that everything happens for a reason. And no matter the reason, you don't have to understand the why. It's what do you do from where you are now? The other question I like to ask people is, who do you know? Because if you try and do it on your own, as Dov said earlier, you're not Steve Jobs, you're not Elon Musk. Do not try and do it alone. Get somebody who's walked in them footsteps, because it shortens the time of the pain. And the one thing I never did was actually ask for help. I was too proud, much to my detriment for a lot of the time. But the moment I was brave enough to ask, that's when the trajectory of where I was going changed, because I asked help. But I didn't ask randomly. I asked someone that had actually done it. And that changed who I was because of the advice and the support that you get along the way. Don't try and do it alone.
I think it's one of the most powerful things anybody can do is ask for help. We think it's powerful to give help, and certainly that can be, but it's very powerful, extraordinarily powerful to ask for help, because you're saying, I don't have the answers, I don't have the perspective, I am not objective in my subjective reality, and I need somebody to see what I cannot see. And that's why the people that I work with and that you work with who are extraordinarily successful continue to be so, because they go, oh yeah, I need objectivity, I need perspective that I don't have. Baz, it's been a pleasure and honor, sir. Please tell people where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you have, including RAMS.
Sure. Firstly, it is a privilege to be here with you, and thank you so much for your time, Dov. I genuinely mean that. You're an amazing soul, and you give so much, and I want to really honor that. For the people who are listening out there, please download this, share it with somebody. Get him, Dov, and the podcast to top 5 in the world.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Where you can find me, ramsbybaz.com, RAMS by Baz.com. On LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. I'm educating there 5 days a week. I'm giving stuff away. Go on the website. There's free resources there as well. Let's have a conversation. And I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you, Baz. It's been a pleasure and honor, sir. And of course, we'll make sure that we post all those links in the show notes so that you can find Baz on his website and, of course, on LinkedIn and anywhere else that he might be. We'll make sure those links, including to his YouTube channel. For those who control the meaning for the tribe, also control the movement of the tribe. So remember that, because leaders committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know they've got to tap into what drives human behavior, and that is the emotional source code. I am Dov Barron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified, actualized meaning is the monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant and getting in that top 5. So please do whatever you can. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. We really appreciate it. If you rate, review, and subscribe to the show, it makes a huge difference to us, and lets Apple and Google and all the other ones know. We really appreciate it. So the next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how you can take your trauma and transform it into your power simply by asking for help and then going through maybe the RAMS system. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach this next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, in your leadership impact. And I am out.